The old saying is drive for show and putt for dough. Today, we are going to take our first steps on our way to becoming a masterclass putter. In order to become an expert, we must first make sure you 100% understand the fundamentals of the putting stroke and how they are measured in the new Evo swing in 2K25. The easiest to understand are the contact and the swing path metrics. Contact simply represents how your club face is facing at impact. Swing path represents the path of your putting stroke. Any deviation from the middle on either of these metrics will result in the putt being offline. Small misses, like in this example of swing path being plus 2.65 for a push, will be marginal for short putts, but become more and more important the longer that putt is. Remember, all putts are straight back and straightforward motion, which is different from the swing bias that's used on all other shots. If you happen to be a person that is struggling with either of these, be sure to practice that straight down and straight up motion. And if you continue to struggle, consider spending some attribute points to improve your player and widen the forgiveness area. Putt weight, or transition as it's displayed in the Evo swing, is the ability to hit the desired distance that is set by your aim marker. After you put in some reps, you will certainly start to get a feel for it, and in my opinion, it becomes the easiest of the putting skills to master. If you do need some help in this area, try staring directly at the distance bar in the Evo swing circle, and if you have vibration enabled, try pushing it forward the second you feel any in the backswing. Lastly is probably the most complex of the putting metrics, rhythm. Rhythm is measuring the speed difference between your backswing and downswing. In a perfect world, it is a 1-to-1. However, I see many people struggle with the overswing or increased power for rhythm. What this is telling you is that you're simply pushing forward too quickly. So if you're pulling it back slow, you also have to push it forward slow. Or if you pull it back fast, you have to push it back at that same speed. That is what the game is looking for. More often than not, I see people who feather it back slowly and then flick it forward be the ones that struggle with rhythm. Both the feathering it back slowly and the fast motion can be done effectively. It's really a personal preference. However, the key takeaway is if you are finding yourself overpowering your rhythm, in order to dial it back, you will either need to speed up when you pull back or slow down when you're pushing forward. This timing mechanic, in my opinion, is the most challenging of these 4 putting metrics. And that being said, I would highly advise putting a large chunk of your attributes towards rhythm if this is a continuous issue in your putting. Now that we understand how the swing mechanics work, we can now look at how the greens work. The first and most important part of the greens is the green speed. The speed will be located in your HUD, and it will range significantly from a measure of under 100 feet to potentially north of 200 feet. And what this number essentially is like a stimp meter reading for each green. The lower the number, the slower the green. The higher the number, the faster the green. The actual number itself is derived from what a 100% power putt on a flat surface on the green you're playing would roll. If that green speed is up to 200 on that same green, that's going to go 200 feet. Obviously 97 and 200 are at the extreme ends of the spectrum, but when we're playing from course to course, even we see maybe 130 green speed and then 150 green speed, we can acknowledge that the 130s are a little bit slower and they're going to play a little different than the 150s. So this is definitely something noteworthy and something you should pay attention to when you step on to the first green. The last step is reading the greens. As you will see, I do not have the green reader ability unlocked, which means my squares are a standard 3 foot by 3 foot in dimensions. As a quick tangent, on the green skill tree, the only one that seems to provide value to me is the proficiency boost for the standard putt and chip, but we're talking putting here. And the proficiency boosts simply increase your sweet spots. The green reader itself costs so many attribute points to unlock, and you also have to purchase other green skills that, in my opinion, are not worth it. The Texas wedge, for example, only increases the distance in which you can putt from when you're off the green. You can still putt from off the green when you're on the fringe, and oftentimes the Texas wedge is just simply not needed. The other putting skill that's available is the lag putt, which is essentially there for those who struggle with their transition, especially on long putts, which for me isn't all that valuable. Okay, so back to actually reading the greens. The game uses grid lines with moving beads to indicate the speed. The faster the bead is moving, the faster the break is in that area. Additionally, there are corresponding colors used from green to red. Green being the slowest, and then yellow, then orange, and then finally being red, the fastest greens. Over time, you'll naturally develop a feel for how these colors and speeds correspond to break, and I am basically an all-feel putter at this point based on those colors and movements. But that doesn't really give you much analysis on what to do if you're struggling, and maybe you don't feel it all that well. So there is a way, or a rough estimate way, to break it down mathematically. A few years back, I talked with one of the top players in the game, and he used a number-based system to calculate his putts, and it still holds true in 2K25. Basically, the long and the short of it is, it comes down to assigning a number value to each of the moving beads between your ball and the cup. Then you add them all together and adjust your aim marker accordingly. Each of the colors is going to have an assigned range where green is 1 to 3, that's a lower end number. Then yellow would move up to 4 to 6 speed, orange 7 to 9, and quite frankly, red, just good luck. It would be some sort of low double-digit number if you really want to assign a number value. But if you're putting over a red slope, it's going to be very, very tough to calculate anything. So the reason for each of those ranges is because within each of those different colored lines, the beads will have a range of speed. So not all green lines are moving at the same speed. So essentially there'll be a fast green line or a slow green line or about average. So that's where you have to make that judgment. Okay, this is a 1, 2, 3. I fully acknowledge that this is very complex, but the end result might really help you as far as a good reference point if you're just not starting the putts online. Okay, let's break down this putt. Before we start reading the beads, just a couple things to note. One being the 151 green speed, and the other it just being a standard flat 14 feet. You can see at my aim marker at 16 feet, it goes up an inch. However, at 14 feet, it is flat. So this is mainly a flat putt. Reading the beads, there are 3 lines between my ball and the hole. Okay, they are all green lines and they're moving moderately slow. I'm going to assign a number value from 1 to 3 because they're all green to each of these lines, and then we're going to add them up. The very first line is moving at what I would call a 1 speed. It can't get much slower than that. The second line isn't moving all that much quicker. It's probably just a smidge over 1, if anything. So we're going to call that a 1 as well. Okay, the third line just next to the cup where I'm moving the aim marker right now is definitely quicker. We're going to call that a 2. So we have a 1, and a 2 for a total of 4. Now there are a couple other things to pay attention to. First, the cup is always going to be in the middle of a square, which means you want to look at the grid line just beyond the hole as well to make sure that it is still moving in the same direction as before, with the grid line really just representing that specific spot on the green and how it is moving. The ball obviously travels beyond that line when it is rolling to the cup, so it might roll just a smidge more to the left because that grid line is going to the left. Additionally, just beyond the ball doesn't always start on a grid line, and it's almost starting on one at our feet, which is also moving right to left. So instead of our 4 calculation, with the grid line beyond the hole and at our feet both moving right to left as well, I'm going to say this is a 5 calculation. What does that mean? I've seen some people do these little clicks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you can click over left and right. Now that's one method. However, we just went through a long process of calculating that, and these little clicks like that click as opposed to this click, small, very small clicks, this feels very uncalculated because each click may vary in distance when you're moving it over. What I have done is I use these edges as a reference point, okay? So on the left or right side, we're going to call these 20. So if you calculate it up to 20, that's how far over this break would be. halfway between that, somewhere around here, would be about 10. And we're at 5. So I need my marker to be about halfway between where it currently is in the hole. So I'm going to say right about there. Okay. Now, if I use my putt preview, let's see what happens. Bada bing, right in the cup. And that's what you want. All right, so let's break down this extended long putt together and see what happens, okay? So I'm going to move my aim marker in and slowly point at the line as I'm calculating it and go from there. So 2 plus 2 is 4, plus 3 is going to be 7. I'm going to call this one a 5. We're going to say that's 12. This almost seems orange. It's starting to be that orange color. I'm going to say we're up to 19. This is a very fast yellow, so we're at 25. That's almost at the yellowish tint, greenish yellow, so 29. That's pretty fast moving green, so 32. We'll call that a 2, so that's 34. You'll also notice right in the middle of this putt, a lot of that yellow is moving very, very fast, and we're putting outside of our 3 foot by 3 foot square. So I think it's going to impact us a little bit more. So I'm going to say it's almost in the 40 range rather than a 34. So you have to factor in the eye test a little bit as well. Oh, and I didn't even factor the foot brake. So yeah, it's definitely closer to the 40-ish range, okay? So when we move this over, this first line is 20. This second full box, we're actually going to call this 40. So this is about where I would aim here. And quite frankly, I don't even know if it still passes the eye test. I might say it goes a little bit further. So once again, strictly calculating, I think we're about here. You also have to realize you're going outside of your 3 foot by 3 foot zone. And I'm going to say it's right around here. Okay, let's see what happens. Not changing the distance at all, of course. Okay, so apparently we were spot on. Getting your lines right, and maybe you'll even make it. Oh, I think our rhythm there, the plus 0.02, kept us on the high side. Okay, so we've pretty much touched on everything there is to know about putting. There's a couple last little pointers that I'll give right here regarding the default aim marker. The default aim marker is actually a great starting point. For uphill putts or slow playing greens, I might push that out just a little bit to give it a little bit extra pace, or because it's slow, I'm not really as scared to blast it by. Conversely, if it's on a really fast green, I might pull that in, or if it's a downhill putt, I might pull the default aim marker in just a little bit. But for the most part, if you're just starting out and you're playing on some simple greens, the default aim marker is a pretty good reference point. It may take some fine tuning and getting used to, but once you start paying attention to the actual green speed number and you're acknowledging that this is an uphill or downhill putt, you might feel a little bit more confident and you won't be blasting it by the hole, or even worse, leaving it significantly short. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, I'd really appreciate if you can give it a thumbs up, as liking the video will help push it out to more people who might benefit from it as well. Also, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel, as it means a lot and it will help the channel grow and me achieve my own personal goals. Lastly, if you have any questions or thoughts on putting, drop them in the comments below and help us all learn together. Thanks once again for watching, and best of luck rolling the flat stick.